Well, we've got a divided economy. As you say, some businesses have come out of this really doing well. Resources sector's kicking goals, and frankly, thank God for it because it's keeping us going. But the hospitality sector, tourism, aviation, sport, entertainment, they're really suffering badly, and that is having a big impact. And I think the government has no option but to start turning down JobKeeper. We can't keep going forever. We haven't got unlimited funding. We can't keep borrowing and borrowing and borrowing. And then I think we'll get a good picture of what the real economy is like, just how strong it is and what are the weak points and where do we need to focus. So I think the federal government and the state governments now have got to focus on the post-pandemic recovery. This is where, I mean, obviously you've got to keep worrying about the pandemic and quarantining and all that stuff and vaccination, but we need to think through this and start saying, now, how do we get this economy going? It was already soft coming into the pandemic. Wage growth, zero. Productivity, appalling. It was already weak. So, the pandemic has highlighted some more weaknesses. So we would be really looking for governments, federal and state, to start really focusing on what are we going to do post the pandemic to get things moving. And I see the Treasurer in New South Wales has brought out again the need for significant tax reform, get rid of stamp duty and look at payroll tax and other taxes which are a tax on progress. And let's get this economy going. Yeah,
look, state governments have really stepped up, and in many ways the budgets of the states are looking a little bit better than the federal governments, I might say. The New South Wales experience is an interesting one. Grants have worked really well for small business, but what mechanism do you think should replace JobKeeper? Because as you say, it's spotty. The tourism industry, the aviation industry is obviously suffering really badly. But, if you go to the north coast of New South Wales at the moment, you cannot get a hotel booking for, until the end of March. In Cairns, it's very different. So what mechanism? That seems to be the biggest question here.
I think what you've got to do is, in terms of support, you've got to focus on those businesses which are obviously suffering. And you can't use a broad brush approach. But so, the aviation sector, for example, is under tremendous stress. So you've got to look at that. The hospitality sector in many parts of Australia, perhaps excluding northern New South Wales, which is having a boom, is really suffering. So you've got to look at far more targeted support packages for these sectors which are really suffering.
OK, we keep on hearing that, Tony Shepherd, targeted support. But you know how politicians speak. What does that actually mean, do you think? In what form?
That can take two forms. That can take grants or loans, low interest, long-term loans, whatever, just anything to just keep them going. But the other side of that coin is getting them going, you know what I mean, and keeping them going. So there's on and off border closures, which has become almost like ludicrous, has got to stop. We've got to get the economy going. Yeah, we haven't beaten this thing yet, but boy, oh boy, we're doing a really good job by world standards in keeping it under control and reducing its impact. And the vaccination's coming. So now's the time to focus. Now, how do we get the brakes off and get business going?
Yeah. Well, you talk about those underlying issues before COVID even hit. Wages growth has been at a standstill for quite some time. There's issues with productivity. So, they say never waste a crisis. It doesn't seem like there's any big reform agendas, reform agenda on the plate of the federal government. But what do you think should be done?
Well, look, it's pretty hard if the Senate, the government, the federal government doesn't control the Senate, so it's very hard to get anything significant through, and it's a torturous negotiation. I think industrial relations reform is absolutely an imperative. We're going back to the 70s now. We've got awards covering everything, and enterprise bargaining agreements have died. So you've got to really get those going, those sorts of reforms going, in my view. We've got to get unemployment down too. Trump got unemployment down to 3.5%, and wages took off. So if you want to get wages going, you've got to get productivity up, and you've got to get unemployment right down.
Well, how did he do it? And what can we adopt?
Well, he did it through tax. He cut the company tax rate and gave instant write-off on capital investment. The US economy just went crazy. It was terrific. Pity then the pandemic hit and knocked it off its stool, but it really did work. It really did work. And there's a message in there too.
Yep, we tried that company tax cut here. It didn't quite work, and it doesn't seem anyone's really got the hankering for a fight over that at this point. Do you understand that
I agree.
Politics are too hard here?
Yeah, it's a bit hard, yeah, but I would think accelerated write-off of capital investment is imperative. We've come through the pandemic pretty well, but it shows that we haven't invested a lot in new technology. You know, we were caught with call centres overseas, all this sort of stuff, when we could have had far more investment in digital technology, AI and things like that, which would have cut out the need for a lot of these sorts of manual processes. So my view would be, particularly in technology investment, instant write-off would be great. Again, I said the New South Wales government is, making grants and what have you to encourage that sort of investment. But that's the sort of thing the government should be doing.
And just finally, climate's always on the agenda. It is once again. It won't quite be a climate change election. It'll be a COVID change election, whether it happens later this year or next. But is this an opportunity, do you think? Make climate change about attracting more investment, being innovative, making it about jobs rather than an environmental issue?
Well, look, I think climate change and climate change politics are here to stay forever, and it's a constructive move in the right direction. In Australia, we've paid a very heavy price so far. I mean, cost of electricity has gone up about 4 times in the last 20 years. We've closed down a lot of our manufacturing. So I think we need to have a really good investment in things that will make renewables really efficient and work. And those two things are, we've got to vastly improve the transmission system so that we can access these markets, but also we've got to make sure that we have the stable firming or base load, as some people call it, whether that be batteries, pumped hydro or gas, whatever. We've got to make sure we keep that going as well so that our system is reliable as well as affordable.